So, as part of enterprise architecture, we have discussed about what enterprise architecture is. At the same time, we discussed about what is business architecture, application architecture, systems, data, all that stuff. Of course, solution architecture, something will be as separate. So, today, as part of enterprise architecture, we are using different frameworks, something like Jacqueline framework from a very old long time. At the same time, now and then we are using TOGAF also. So TOGAF, uh, which is called the Open Group Framework, where this is one of the enterprise architecture framework widely used in the across enterprises. So first of all, we must be knowing about two things. One is about the architecture development method, which is called EDM in short, architecture development cycle, followed by EDM principles. Understanding over these two is important. Now, when we try to understand about the architectural development life cycle, being a when we are applying for when you guys are applying for you need to have certification and all. So understanding about the multiple phases, something like preliminary phase, all that. In this, when trying to understand about the development life cycle, when we are learning and when we want to implement this TOGAF framework in the organization to align the business goals, because aligning the business goals is the ultimate priority, is always important here. So aligning the business goals and so that whatever the improvements that we do must be aligning to the goal and vision of the organization. That's where success majorly lies. So for this, the first thing we need to know about the architecture vision, because what is the scope and as well as definition of the stakeholder mapping, right? So what should be the vision of the architecture? Everything we must be knowing. That is point number one. Second, business architecture. Business architecture majorly focusing on the business capability, right? So of the business, like what services they have, right? So who are their competitors? What business process and functionalities do they have? Everything will be part of business architecture. That is understanding, right? So that we have to know under the defining the scope, right? So what are the different principles and tools that we use, everything, but that we must be good with. Next, information systems architecture, majorly focusing on what kind of data that we are using, right? So at the same time, what kind of applications that we use, because sometimes we at the enterprise level, we need to integrate with some internal or external systems to manage our business activity in that regard. So understanding over the systems architecture approach, right? So understanding about the kind of applications that we are using, everything will be part of it. Later, technology architecture majorly focuses more on the environment. What are the hardware and software infrastructure that we are used to implement? Because sometimes enterprises were in the on-premise services. Now they are moving some of their applications towards the cloud environment. So understanding the virtual infrastructure of the applications that we want to transform, everything will be part of technology architecture. Next one about the opportunities and solutions, because in this process, one should understand about what gap that we have identified. What is the predominant gap is identified here, wherein by performing gap analysis, understanding over the gap, right? So what are the predominant gaps that are involved in it, wherein by identifying through as is and to be process, whatever the existing process we have, right? So what are the something that we want to be move on. This is all about the gap analysis, including implementation. So these are all will be part of opportunities and solutions and all. The next one about the migration planning, where we need to identify the roadmap. At the same time, we must be knowing about what are the benefits we have, project management. How are we migrating from one system to another system, right? How the data migration has been taken place. This is all about the migration planning part. Next, implementation governance, wherein we need to see project compliance reviews. Everything will be part of implementation governance. Like we must ensure that, including architectural change management, something like changes in the changes and managing the changes, as well as assessing the impact of the updating the architecture. This is all about the changes, because in future any business level changes should have the flexibility to do that. This is all about the architectural development method. On a high level note, one should be known with. Next, what are the different ADM principles we have? What are the core values and all, right? The first one about the business impact, business primacy, that we need to see. Second, about the common vocabulary, and followed by enterprise scope understanding, that is more important. Next one about the architecture continuum, right? So followed by architecture repository, how are we managing the assets and how are they managing the products, everything will be part of architecture repository. Next one about the compliance and governance, right? So we need to adhere to the standards. We need to adhere to the guidelines as well as the processes. This is all part of compliance and governance, etc. Later, stakeholder focus. We need to engage with the consent of the interested parties, right? So either it can be internal or external stakeholders, understanding is required. Continuous improvement to evaluate any architecture performances. So continuous improvement is needed. Next, interoperability is also one of the ADM principles, where we need to know about the systems. We must be knowing about the applications and organizations. Interoperability is more important. Later, how are we maximizing the reuse of it, right? So adopting different common solutions so that we can reduce the duplication, because one of the biggest challenge when we are implementing any new solutions and all that, so we need to identify and reduce the duplications. That is even important. Followed by that, risk management, because what kind of risk management measures that we are taking, right? So by identifying and assessing the risk, migrating the risk and decisions and all. Next was balanced objectives, like what are the trade-offs between architecture views and as well as concepts. So it's all about the balanced objectives. So these are the two measurements when we are working on TOGAF is important. So one is about knowing about the ADM cycle, which is more important, followed by what are the architectural development principles are all about.